Where them Catholics at? Yeah. Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
And welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show after a 4-day hiatus. So, we usually take the weekends off, and then we're right back at it, usually Monday through Friday. Problem is, I was 1 month into not having my hairs cut, and then my appointment got bumped to right before we record the show. And it was either that or wait another week. So I said, guess what? There's no show. And then yesterday, woke up with all intents and purposes of picking up where we left off last Friday and couldn't do it because there was a big stinking message on my phone from the cable company that said, hey, there's an outage in your area, but we're working quickly to get it resolved. Well, quickly must be a relative term because it took them almost 20 hours to restore service. So we got to spend the entire day living like it was 1995, back when Ed was just in his mid-60s, a young whippersnapper.
Exactly. We didn't have no internet back then.
I mean, the internet existed, but it wasn't widespread. It wasn't like, hey, you just instantly turn on your TV and it's connected to the internet. Your TV weighed enough that if you carried it around the house more than once a day, you'd look like Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
But it was nice. It was nice to not have the internet because I don't think people realize how much time gets taken away from your day. And I get it. If you're like me or anybody else that works from home, you rely on the internet. Sure. The internet's what makes money for you, whether you're doing it as for a 9-to-5, like you're an accountant, but you just work from your home office, or you're like me, you're a writer. There's, what are they called? Content creators, all those guys. You rely on the internet for just about everything you do. Yeah. But it was so nice to not have it for a full day that I didn't realize how much time was taken away and taken out of my day until the internet was removed and I had so much more time. Now, obviously, I couldn't work yesterday because I write and my clients all connect with me through online applications like ClickUp. So I couldn't work. So I just did work here at home. I went outside and cut the grass, picked up a load of straw for the animal bedding, fed the animals. And then I sat down. I'm like, it's 11 o'clock. I did all of that before 11. I'm like, I guess I could pressure wash the house, clean the pool, top off the water levels because it's been so stinking hot with people climbing in and out that we've lost a little bit of water level in the pool. Pumped out the duck pond, refilled it, got a whole lot done, and then I had no idea what to do, so we had to break out the old hard copy DVDs for the kids to stop pestering after they got done playing outside and came in looking like little George Hamiltons from the sunburn they had. All right, cool off, sit in the AC. You can watch some Ratatouille or some Little Giants or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. The good old things, right?
Yeah.
But it did make me, like I said, more conscious of how much time is removed from our days simply because the internet exists. There's so many things in projects that I had around the house that I had time for, that apparently I've always had time for, but I wasn't aware that the time existed for them until I didn't have the ability to sit down at my desk and work with, the internet there. Because on my days off, because I set my own days off, yeah, the internet's still available. I don't come back here to my desk and work, but I usually have things like planned. Okay, it's Saturday. We're going to go to this place, do this thing, to this restaurant, eat this food, whatever. It's take the family out, do some family things together. This was just the middle of a week, literally the middle. It was Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And normal stuff's going on. You know, my kids haven't started school yet. They start Monday because my daughter turns 12 on Sunday. And like homeschool starts on Monday, and then it's Monday through Thursday, flat out every single week. So this is kind of the last week before we have to do anything. And normally it's just kind of chill. I'm back here working, wife's in there doing whatever it is that she does during the day, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, ordering food for, you know, grocery deliveries, or just playing games with the kids. But then I always find myself stressed out because, man, yard needs to be cut. And my gardener or lawn guy is on hiatus because he's not feeling well. So for about 2 weeks, it's just been me having to do everything, which is fine. You know, it's cool. But I'm like, yard's got to be cut. This has got to be done. That's got to be done. I still got to go pick up all this straw. I still got to do this stuff. And I never find time for it because by the time I'm done with my work day, places are closing up or I'm just mentally beat. And all I want to do is sit in the living room and hang out with the fam.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're going to mass, or I'm going to adoration, which is tonight, or whatever it is. And so I think I get it why people say, and even in the movie The Matrix, 1999, Agent Smith says, we built the Matrix based on your civilization in 1999, which was the peak of your civilization. Yes, the internet existed, but no one had smartphones where you could pull out and be on the internet all day unless you're paying an exorbitant fee every month for your phone bill. But people had to go and do things. They had to keep themselves occupied. My kids couldn't say, hey, let me stream this show, or hey, let me play this online game like Minecraft or Roblox or whatever it is that they're in there playing with each other, Fortnite. They couldn't do those things. And so like, what do we do, Dad? I'm like, go outside. We have a trampoline. We have a pool. We've got a big yard. You've got board games, puzzles. You got all kinds of stuff. Just go do something. And they did, because my kids aren't the kind that are glued to a screen all day. You know, my wife and I, neither one of us will let that happen. But I can see how if you're a parent and let's say you're always busy working, you don't have time to, and I'm not going to say you're not making it a priority. This is not what I'm saying. But for the parents that if mom and dad both work, or it's a single dad, or it's a single mom, and sometimes you don't really have a choice, because if we're being realistic, some people don't have a choice, but go entertain yourself, kid. I've really got a lot to do. And so the kid's either in front of the TV, on a tablet, on a phone, on a computer, or on a game system. And that's where they spend their time, because life isn't convenient, you know, where you can make time to do quality things with your kids all the time. So I could see how it would have been a challenge if I was in a position where that was the case. You know, my wife, stay-at-home mom, I work from home. So we get way more access to our kids than most parents do. Right? There's very few people that are in the same position that I am. And I understand that, because I was working 60 to 70 hours a week at my 9 to 5, even when my wife was a stay-at-home mom, but then she's beat and exhausted being by herself with no help all day. So I can imagine what kind of a challenge it would be for some of the other people around here in my neighborhood, because it was just kind of like my neighborhood that was affected. And they're like, oh, great, I've got 5 kids and I've still got to go to work, and the kids can't entertain themselves, because when kids get bored, that's when things get set on fire, things get broken. I'm like, I get it because I did all those things when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, broke things, set things on fire, roamed the neighborhood. It's funny because our parents always assumed like we're just riding around within, I don't know, like a 500-yard radius of our homes when we were kids. We were like 17 miles away.
Yeah.
With a bunch of fellow 8-year-olds jumping off of bridges into creeks or lakes or whatever, throwing pine cones at passing cars. We were nowhere near home, right? So
Very true.
I can see that's probably a better alternative in modern society, that your kids are closer to home, being in the house on a screen. And it's an unpopular opinion. I can't believe you said it's a good thing for kids to be on their screen. Like, we don't live in that society that we did when we were, well, I say we, but when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to worry about all the things that you worry about now. Even if there's not an imminent danger to your kids, there's some places and states where you'll get child services called on you if your kids are outside in the yard playing by themselves.
Yeah.
They're not being supervised. Like, they're 15, but they're not being supervised. Okay, whatever. I'm glad I don't live in one of those places, but those places exist.
Sure.
But it felt so good to just live, quote unquote, like the old days when I was the same age as my kids. And
yeah,
it doesn't happen very often because infrastructure's pretty decent where I live. So even in the harshest of winters or most severe of storms, we rarely lose power for, I don't know, more than a day.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen very often. But what it did do is it gave me a lot of time to be more introspective while I'm, outside doing work with the animals and unloading bales of straw, cutting the grass. And when I'm introspective, I don't know about you, but when I get into those introspective modes, just the kind of the autopilot thing that your mind does when you're working on a task that's purely physical, doesn't require a lot of brain power, so your brain starts occupying itself. I start going through all the crap that I've ever done that was, let's just say, questionable, right? Or, incorrect or wrong points of view that I've had over the past. And you tie that on with the mindset of a Catholic. It's like, oh, let me just beat myself up a little bit while I go through all these things that I did in my youth, or things I could have said better in a conversation with a friend, my wife, my kids over the last 20 odd years. And then it's the opposite of what you do in the shower after you argued with someone, where all of a sudden when you're in there and the hot water's going, you have all the much better responses that you should have said in the argument. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why you're laughing.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting there and you're talking to the person. Well, you know what? But you're by yourself in the shower. It's like that, but more the opposite of, how could you have done that better? Or you know what? Maybe you could go and bring this old thing up that happened 15 years ago, and address it, because who knows, if you can still remember it, the other person might still remember it.
Sure.
And it could be something that you could address and fix. You can't erase, but you could fix it. You could correct it and, clean that slate. And so that's what I do whenever I'm doing anything that doesn't require brain power, like walking around or riding around on a lawnmower or weed eater. It's just autopilot stuff. And so my brain goes off on these tangents. It made me think more, not having the distraction of, well, I can just turn on this streaming service and check out for the day since I don't have anything to do for work. It made me think more about living the gospel rather than knowing the gospel, because you can know it passively, and we're all guilty of this in our daily lives. It's like, okay, yeah, we walk around, we do what we got to do. Jerk cuts us off in traffic, we honk, throw our hands up, maybe say a few words under our breath or out the window if you're like me, because road rage is my thing. Or you just neglect, like, hey, doing St. Michael's Lent. But, oh, you know what? I was busy. It's no big deal that I missed it. I had all this stuff on my plate. It's no big deal that I missed my daily rosary. It's no big deal that I didn't read the liturgy of the hours. I was just busy. You check it off, right?
Yeah.
Which, that happens. And it's usually because you're in a place of unconsciousness where you're not realizing that you missed it. I'll just wake up 20 minutes late. I got to do the 3 S's, get the kids out the door, drop them off at school, drive to the job, and realize halfway there you forgot to tell your wife that she needs to order whatever or what you want for dinner, or you ask her what she needed from the store. You just forget things because you get busy in life. And the other thing is that it may being, I mean, obviously I still had my phone and 5G service, but I still spent less time on social media.
Sure.
And with seeing less positive and negative things on social media, it gave me this kind of a reset where I didn't have anything on my mind about, well, is what I'm saying about the Catholic faith something that's going to generate an actual thought process in someone else's mind? As far as, is it going to make them think about Jesus positively, or think about faith in general from a positive aspect? Or, hey, this person seems like they're only saying these things because they want to get a rise out of people. And I did not seeing any of that. It just made me focus on kind of living in the moment. And in that moment, what can I be doing right now to glorify God? And we've talked about vocations and things like that in the past, but I don't know if you know who Leif Babin is.
Not ringing a bell.
I mean, okay, so you know who Jocko Willink is?
No, I know Jocko the monkey from an Australian kids book.
Yeah, this is kind of the same thing, except he's a guy who's a former, I think he was like SEAL Team 4 commander.
Okay.
He's got huge podcast. He owns, I think he owns or is in close partnership with like Origin Maine, which is a jiu-jitsu gi manufacturing company. They make jeans and boots and gis and rash guards and things like that, but hugely popular in like the men's self-help kind of space. Well, his partner, who was like his second in command, who he wrote a book with him called Extreme Ownership. You've probably heard of that book.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Well, they wrote the book, and Leif Babin has this thing where he says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And also, you become whatever you tolerate.
Sure.
It got me thinking about a lot of the things that I tolerate. And I'm not just talking about in other people, but things that I tolerate in myself that I justify. Because no one ever comes out right and says, man, I am such a terrible person. Because we all have this instinct to make ourselves seem like the hero in all of the stories we tell ourselves.
Sure.
What you don't realize sometimes is in somebody else's story, whether rightly or wrongly, you're the bad guy. You're the
Yeah, you're the
villain.
villain. Yeah.
You are the villain in somebody else's story, whether it's justifiable or maybe they just don't like you because they're dumb, because you're of course supremely and universally likable.
Of course.
Oh, I know I am. I don't know about you. It's taken a little while to
Well,
warm up to you, but I'm getting there.
all right. Okay. Another 70 episodes and we'll be right there.
Another 70 episode. We're on 77 now, which is crazy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem possible.
But you know what I mean? There's things about you that you tolerate and you write off as a point of, well, it's justifiable because my indignation is righteous indignation, or my attitude is justified because I was provoked or I was under stress. And so you do realize you tolerate a whole hell of a lot more from yourself when it comes to questionable or even bad behavior or judgments, words, language, than you would of anybody else if you were looking at them, seeing the way they live their life. Because then you have this bird's eye view of your own personal superiority of, you shouldn't be doing that as a Catholic. You shouldn't be doing that as a good Christian man or woman. But all things being equal, you tolerate so much about yourself that you shouldn't.
Sure.
And so that's what I spent the majority of the day doing while I was outside working on stuff, was being very introspective. And I got on to trying to figure out what it is that I tolerate in myself, action-wise, that I shouldn't be tolerating anymore. It was quite a freeing experience. I don't know if you ever take time to do that because you're always busy. You've got 47 churches you're doing work for. You've got old ladies galore that you're building and painting and fixing stuff for. So I don't know if you ever get into that, but that's just what happens to me.
Yeah. well, it's amazing. I'm sure it probably took you the whole 20 hours to go through your list of things that you tolerate by yourself, right?
I'm still not done.
But you're still not done? Okay. You're barely scratching the surface.
I had to put a pin in it. I made it through like 3 months.
Yeah, no, I do. And it's so funny that you say that what it was that's spurred that this time. It was the lack of internet. And because that internet and that having everything available to you on a screen at all times is causing a lot of us to just accept ourselves for who we are, right?
Well, you can replace internet with any kind of distraction, but the distraction for me was work, which is on the internet. So the work is facilitated by the internet. So the internet was kind of the thing, right?
It is. But like if you were home and if you had no access to TV, your phone, laptop, Kindle, any of that kind of stuff, you would at least you'd find other things to get busy with that would prevent you from working on yourself. But at least it would take you a little while. Whereas, we have all this stuff that's so available to us. We don't even, I mean, it'd be like, wow, I really should caulk that tile that's loose in the kitchen. Oh, Dr. Phil's on, I mean, it's that split second. So, so having all this stuff available all the time is not really good. So I try to not fall into that trap. In fact, in the room that I work in, when I'm doing work from home, there's nothing available other than what I'm working on, so I don't get caught up in that. Because I'm very weak. I get caught up in stuff all the time. You're talking about what happened to you with 20 hours without internet. Well, a dozen years ago, when Hurricane Sandy hit this area and hit it hard, we had no power for 6 days. So that's a bit of a step up. And
yeah, I remember that. I think the closest thing we had to Hurricane Sandy here in South Carolina was Hurricane Andrew, but I was just a kid.
Yeah.
And I was actually at Myrtle Beach when Hurricane Andrew hit.
Oh, wow.
We were stuck there for a few days.
Yeah.
Mainly
Yeah.
because we needed to let all the water after the surge had receded. We had to let all of the water run out of the car and out of the engine, right? Well,
Yeah,
hopefully, I
yeah,
mean, we didn't have like gaps, like I don't know, we didn't have like a head gasket that allowed water to get into the engine, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to fire it up while there's still water up into the tailpipe and all that other.
yeah.
I remember my stepdad climbing underneath and just like lowering the exhaust just so it could
Drain.
drain a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that. But yeah, a week in a motel, no power, no
Oh, that's
nothing. And
fun.
internet wasn't a thing there. So
Yeah,
that
no.
was kind of rough. I remember that.
No, it was, but it was, and that was so here, other than the first day, at the end of the first day, and thinking, oh, this is going to be no big deal, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, it's 5:45 and it's pitch black outside and inside the house, and then you got to deal with that. Other than that, actually, we kind of settled into a whole. I don't know. It was nice, because hanging out. My kids were. My daughter was 17 at the time. My son was 13 and a half. So they were, a good age. That wasn't like you were worried about, screaming kids or things like that. So we actually, man, we took advantage of that time and just we went on long hikes and sat and talked and it was actually 3 days. When the power came back on, it was almost like a disappointment, but not too much because we had always been that way anyway. Even with full power and full internet and stuff, we were always doing things. The kids weren't fixated with TVs or computers or that kind of thing. So,
Right.
but
Well, think about what you do now. When
yeah,
you go and you're driving around to go on your errands or go help people or work
sure,
at one of the parishes you work at.
yeah,
When you're driving, 99% of the time, you've got the radio on. You're listening
mhm,
to talk radio, you're listening to music, you're singing along. You see people walking down the street, whether they're jogging, whether they're in the gym lifting weights, whatever it is, they've got earbuds in, they're listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, they're
mhm,
listening to music. And it's just all this extra noise that keeps you from having to think about anything to
yeah,
where you're never alone with your thoughts anymore. Yesterday, while outside, cutting grass, cleaning, hauling, unloading, I'm alone with my thoughts.
yeah,
And so you find things to do that need to be done, but there's no noise up here in your head and you're not distracted and you can have important conversations with yourself. You
yeah,
know, you can have important conversations with God that, oh, I was gonna, deal with this thing that's been stressing me out. But oh, look, it's my favorite song. Let's crank the volume up, roll the windows down, and sing. And then you're just distracting yourself from the important conversations.
sure. Yeah, I've actually gotten into a habit lately where when I get into the car, the radio stays off, and you get a mile or two down the road, and just that silence. The only thing you're hearing is like the hum of the wheels on the road and things like that. And I do have those conversations with myself, with God. If it's a longer trip, I've got a whole series of prayers that I run through in my head. Sometimes I'll say them out loud. You get some weird looks when you're at a traffic light or whatever, but who cares? So I love when you're pulling up when you pull up alongside somebody and you're at a point in a prayer where I'll make the sign of the cross, and if someone next to me sees it, they start panicking, like looking around, like what did that guy see? What's going wrong? What's up? Did he need to bless himself? But you know, but other than that, it's just a good habit that I've been trying to get into lately because it's true. I am the king of distractions. I mean, as much as okay, I'm kind of like a weird dichotomy going on there because if I go down to the beach, especially if it's off season, there's nobody around, nothing's open. I can go and I can flop my butt on the sand and I can stare out at that ocean for hours and just have nothing but thoughts, having conversations in my head and things like that. But in the
It's
real
like that
world,
new trend of raw dogging flights. Oh, I've got a
exactly.
4-hour flight. I'm gonna raw dog it. No earbuds, no movies. I'm just gonna stare at the back of the seat.
I know, and people around
4
you
hours.
think you're a nut. But but if I'm here, but if I'm at my house, I've got I'll have I mean, there's been times I'm playing music on my phone. I got the TV on. I mean, I've got like 10 different things. I'm working on the computer. I'm like I have 5 different sources of noise going on, and I'm like, well, this is ridiculous. This is the stupidest thing ever. But so sometimes I get that way, but then so that's why I'm conscious of it, and I try to have those moments where everything is off, and it's for a long period of time. I mean, the good thing is
Ed's
if
over
you
here raw dogging life.
I'm raw dogging life, baby. So, but what I'll like something like what's really cool I can do here is especially during the week, and if it's not at the height of the summer, I can go down to one of the shore towns that are on the bay side, and I can go and set up my little beach chair, and I can throw a couple of lines in the water to do some crabbing. And that's kind of cool because then you can just sit and think, and you hear the water lapping up against the bulkhead there and everything like that, and just enjoying life and taking it all in. And then every half hour, so you get up and you got to gingerly pull up your little line to see if you got a crab on there. Because I don't use traps. Traps are for weenies. Okay, if you're gonna pull it up and the guy's stuck in there, what's the fun of that? You got to slowly pull up that line without losing that crab that's hanging on to that chicken neck you got on there. But anyway, but so I like to put myself in a position where I have those moments of reflection and conversation and things. And there's a lot of things you can do, like you with the yard work. I do the same thing. If you're out there and you're mowing quarter acre, half acre, whatever, with a walk behind or something, you're going to be out there for a while, and you've got time to get along because you're not going to play music or anything because you've got a mower
You
going.
can't hear it.
You can't hear it. So what's the point? So you think and you have those God conversations or internal conversations. But that's what I like about either sitting on the beach and staring out at the waves and listening to the seagulls and stuff, or sitting by the bay and doing some crabbing and stuff because it's just you and your thoughts and God's beauty all around you. And it's like the perfect setup to really get some thinking done and make some decisions and decide where I screwed up my life and what am I going to do about it. It's a conversation I have often.
Hi, I'm Ed. I bet you're wondering how I got into this situation. Yeah, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I ended up here.
Exactly.
No, it makes sense. But that's pretty much how I spent the entire day yesterday. Just in that raw dogging loop of letting the noise in my head exist rather than being drowned out by random distractions. I will say there's one thing that almost sent me down the internet rabbit hole, though.
Yeah.
It was because that new study that came out about the Shroud of Turin that indicated it actually is from the 1st century. Now, I remember it was like 1978, 1981, somewhere in that time frame. Study came out that determined, oh no, it's from the 12th century. It was from like 13 whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that turned out to be false because the part of the shroud that they tested was the part that had been recordedly restored. I guess there was some damages to it, so it had to restore certain sections or like a certain section of the shroud. And so that's why when they did so, the carbon dating they did on that one piece came from the Middle Ages rather than had they looked anywhere else on the shroud, it would have indicated much older.
Yeah.
Now, look, I don't know where you stand on the Shroud of Turin. We've discussed it in the past. But there's like 5 enigmas regarding the image on the Shroud of Turin. Now, I'm going to go through these before I give you my take on it.
Okay.
But check this out. One is the image itself.
Mhm.
It's only on the uppermost surface of the fibrils. And the fibrils are basically the little edges of the linen thread, right?
Mhm.
So that means it couldn't have been formed by chemicals, because chemicals, by their very makeup in nature, would have soaked through the entire thing.
Sure.
Right? Now, the image also shows the whole body, even though that not all areas of the cloth were actually in contact with the whole body. Right?
Mhm.
The image contains zero traces of chemicals or vapors from the body itself.
Mhm.
Now, there's a double image on the thing, on both the front and the back of the linen. Now, linen isn't like this thick, it's almost paper thin,
Sure.
right? Using that scatter X-ray tech that they did, you can see that the image is on the front and on the back, but it's not in the middle, meaning that nothing soaked through from one side to the other.
Mm.
And when they used that ultraviolet, whatever it is, I'm not an expert on this, but whatever it was that shows the image like a film negative, you
Yeah.
could actually see through it in a three-dimensional way, right? Like an X-ray, where it doesn't look 2D.
Mhm.
So that would mean that the image would have required an intense burst of vacuum ultraviolet radiation to produce the discoloration on only the uppermost surface of the shroud's fibrils. But it would have also had to have been absent of all heat.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it would have scorched it, right? It would very be
Sure.
clearly, okay, this is burned. All right. A good example of this would be the shadows that are on the walls that you could see after the atom bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Shadows were burned into the walls, right? Obviously, heat was generated then. But there's no scorching on the fibrils themselves.
Mhm.
So it's vacuum UV radiation. It's the only possible explanation for the image's formation. In order to turn linen into a perfectly photographically sensitive material, you need that kind of radiation. But it has to be done without any kind of heat.
Mhm.
And we're talking several billion watts of light radiation, right?
Mhm.
Which exceeds the maximum output of any source of UV radiation known today.
Mhm.
If that kind of accompanying heat energy had been present at the time this image was transferred onto the linen, the cloth would have been vaporized, just like the people at
Sure.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Right? So, are there some things about the shroud that can be possibly and plausibly explained? Perhaps. But none of those things are the reason why I believe that the Shroud of Turin is real. They can say this image is from the 1st century. They can say this image is from the 13th century. But I try to look at it from a postulator's point of view. Now, some people don't know what the hell a postulator is. It's the person that the Vatican assigns to a canonization case, right? Where
Mhm.
they have to figure out if a miracle occurred in order to attribute it to a person who's possibly up for sainthood. It takes sometimes years, decades even, because they do everything in their power to prove it is not a miracle.
Yeah.
Right? How can this be explained by science or nature? And they look at it, they bring in the most absolute secular researchers and scientists and experts. Prove this is not a miracle. And that's the only thing they want to do, is prove it's not a miracle. They want everything to be ruled out, because they don't set out and say, okay, prove this is a miracle. No, they set out to prove it's not. And when they fail to prove that it's not, when they fail to say, this is obviously insert scientific explanation or natural explanation, when they fail to be able to do that, they simply go, it has to be miraculous because we can't explain it with science or nature. And so that's the position I take on the Shroud of Turin. My position on it will change once, or if someone can explain to me beyond all shadow of a doubt how the image was transferred to the linen on both sides, perfectly uniform, without anything in the center of it. And that it is photographically, it has basically become a photographically sensitive material without any kind of scientific explanation. Well, how did it happen? Every single expert, even the ones that say it's fake, say, I got no friggin' clue, bro. So until they can explain it to me, I'm always going to regard it as real.
Makes sense.
Because there's no explanation that makes any kind of sense. And look, I don't need you to give me, the overly technical details of why it's not real. Just something that you can explain in crayon to a dumb redneck like me that tells me why it's not real.
Yeah. Until
you can do that, it has to be real. It's nothing short of miraculous.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Is that how you look at it, or did you go the other way and went, well, it has to be because,
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I might be coming at it from a different perspective, and it might have to do with my age, actually, even though we joke about that from time to time. But, I was, I guess, in my teens when the first time that they really delved into it, and they were using carbon-14 dating and things like that. So from my earliest days, the Shroud of Turin was a big thing. It was something that was in the news and something people spoke about and cared about. So I've always come from a point of it's true. It's true. I don't have any question about it. You could tell me what you have, this result, that result. The Shroud of Turin is the burial cloth of Christ. So, so for me, it's nice seeing reports like that came out yesterday about the new testing being done, and it does come out to being 2,000 years old and things like that. But, I'm kind of thinking that even if it said, oh, well, it's 1,500 years old or it's 1,700 years old, I probably would have still leaned towards it is the burial cloth of Christ. I mean, I mean, it's like I said, the shroud has always been a part of my life. It's always been something that's there, something you refer to. I've seen documentaries about it, read books about it, talked to people about it who have been there, who have seen it. All this kind of thing, and I guess also maybe just spending time looking at the image in my teens, in my 40s, and in my 50s, whatever. And just, I don't know, somehow it speaks to me. It doesn't, it says, yes, this is the burial shout of your Savior. So it was great to have. I love seeing studies that verify, but I'm not relying on those studies as far as my
Right.
faith in this is concerned. So,
Yeah, and like I said, it's not the study that verified it for me either.
yeah,
It was the fact that no one can tell me how it was faked.
yeah,
Well, it was faked. Okay, well, how was it faked? I don't know. Well, can anyone tell me how it was faked? If you
yeah.
can't come up with a plausible explanation for how it was faked, then are you just, I'm going to assume you're just saying it was faked because you want it to have been faked.
Exactly. Yeah, because there's also that whole thing of the word things that had always been true is that one, if you were going to fake this so that it really stood out to people and they're like, oh my gosh, that's the burial shroud of Christ, you wouldn't do it in this manner, I don't think, because first of all, if you see the shroud in its natural state, you can barely make out anything.
Mhm.
You have to see the negative image. Why would someone who's faking it, even during the Middle Ages, I don't think they would have come up with that. That we have to make this so that at some point, somewhere down the line, someone will put it under the appropriate conditions, and then it'll stand out. I think that they would kind of paint an image of Christ on the cloth, is what they would do. You know, and and even with when they test it incorrectly because they took it, the whole thing is that they used to store the cloth folded up and
Mhm.
in a silver box, and there was a fire in the church it was kept in. The silver melted and dripped on the corner, so when it dripped on a corner it actually went through several layers of it, and those are the pieces that the nuns actually went and sewed in new pieces. So it was to me it was kind of silly that, I mean, how did you not know that you were taking a piece from the repaired sections? Like, how does that not come up? How do you, I mean, you see it in the images, you can see clearly where the repairs had been done. So to me, it always leaned towards, yeah, this is it's the true burial cloth, and people are working desperately to try to disprove it. But I'm not seeing anything, just like you're saying, I'm not seeing anything that says, oh wow, yeah, that's definitely, that's something they picked up at Walmart on sale, something like that. But and also, and over the years, even when they said, okay, it was from the 1200s, whatever, it was still the techniques that had been done to create that image were not things that somebody could have done even in the Middle Ages, let alone the first century. There was always enough evidence that said, okay, even though you're telling me you have this test that says it might not be true, there's still this mountain of stuff you have to disprove to me, because
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It just it seemed, and I get it. I mean, and listen, there's been more than one story of guys who have worked on the shroud who were either atheist or agnostic who are now Catholic.
Yeah, I was going to say they converted
They
simply
converted.
because they could not explain it as a fake.
Yeah.
I will stop believing it's real 100% if someone can present to me how it was faked.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the thing. They cannot tell us how it was done. And if you can't tell me how somebody did something either in the Middle Ages or in the first century to create this image, then I'm thinking that's pretty good evidence as far as it being real,
Yeah.
But
Like, for example, I've got this Zippo lighter sitting here on my desk.
yeah.
If I've got zero idea about it, that I can
Mhm.
open it up, strike it, and make fire,
Yeah.
that's magic until
You open it up and
someone
look.
goes, well, until someone actually says, actually, no, it's not a magical item fallen down from the sky
Yeah.
because it has this and this and this. And they can scientifically, but still enough for me to understand it,
Yeah.
why it creates fire. And then I
Sure.
go, oh, so it's not magic. It's
Yeah.
just science. Then I
Yeah.
immediately stop believing that it's a magic fire maker box thingy, right? And it's the same thing. If you could explain to me how someone in the Middle Ages could generate billions of watts of
Yeah.
lights without heat
Mhm.
to perfectly transfer a nearly photographic when viewed under ultraviolet light image on a piece of linen, with the image only being on a micrometers worth of the fibrils, then I'll go, oh, okay, cool. That's a very elaborate hoax, but it's a hoax. Until you can explain it to me, you're not going to convince me it's a hoax. Just because some guy said, well, we tested it, and this is from the 1300s. Well, another test revealed, well, no. This is carbon dated all the way back to the 1st century.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And the way they did it in this new study was they compared it to another piece of linen that is verifiably confirmed to have come from the years between 50 AD and 75 to 99 AD, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And this is older, but not centuries older. Okay. So which study am I supposed to believe? Because it was a secular researcher that did this, not people trying to prove that it was real. It was just people trying to say, is it fake?
Yeah. And the other element that comes into play, at least as far as I'm concerned, is we have these things that our Protestant brothers and sisters would disagree with me on this, because anything that you and I have in our houses that helps us to reflect and to focus our attention and our prayer life, it could be a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on the wall. It could be a crucifix. It could be, a prayer card or something like that. They would say, "Oh, that's idolatry. You're praying to an idol." Now, you and I know that's.
I've got an idol of Ernest Shackleton's ship right here on my wall.
Well, exactly, because that's
the Endurance.
Yeah, if you're using their definition of an idol, every one of our houses is just piled high with idolatrous images and things like that.
These 60-year-old gloves hanging on this.
That's idolatry, buddy.
And hanging on this 130-year-old boxing bell makes me think of boxing and my time spent in the ring. These are idols.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, right behind me, there's a 125-year-old flag, and I look at it and I think about. Sometimes I'll think about it, like, where was that flown? Was it in just at someone's house that they flew it on special days like the 4th of July and things like that? Was it in a parade? Any of these kind of things. I think of the history of it. Who owned it and stuff. It's certainly not an idol to me.
No, it's an American idol, buddy.
It's an American idol. I see what you did there. But my point being is that, if I'm in church or even here at home and I pull out a prayer book and I'll use prayer cards as bookmarks. Now, again, it has an image of Christ. To me, while I'm praying in this book, I have it open. I have this bookmark sitting there next to it. I see the face of Christ there, and it's helping me to just wipe out everything else that's going on around me and to focus on the image in front of me. And I don't think that this card is Christ. I don't think that this card is God, but it's helping me focus my attention and my prayer towards Christ and towards God. Okay. So so to me, the point I'm making is that with the shroud, it's the same thing. Even if it turns out somewhere down the line, somebody proves to me that it was a fake of some sort, of forgery of some sort, I still think of the millions of times people have either looked at the image itself, seen it in a magazine, they have a copy of it at home, and they've used that image to help them focus their attention and focus their prayer life on Christ. And I'm thinking, how can that be a negative thing? How can that be a bad thing? People are using it for a positive thing. They're using it to help them to just
focus. I don't know of anyone who's actually worshiping the shroud.
Exactly.
Just like when they say, well, you've got a statue of Jesus in your church. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Well, why are you kneeling in front of it? Because I just happen to be kneeling in this spot, right? But you're praying. Yeah, I'm praying to Jesus, who's way up there somewhere. But you're kneeling in front of his statue. His statue is simply a representation of him, just like you have a picture of your mom or your dead grandma on your wall, and you go, "Love you, mama." When you walk by, you don't think that picture is your mom. It's a physical representation of that person, right? When you, like, veterans out there, Protestant and Catholic alike, when you pull out that photo that you took to, Iraq or Afghanistan, that's not your wife, but you go, "I love you, baby." Those aren't your kids, but you go, "I love y'all. I'll be home soon." And stick it back in your blouse pocket. It's the same thing. And I'm not sure what Ed is doing. Probably going to go and turn away some Girl Scouts who decided today is the day and now is the time to sell him some Girl Scout cookies, but he's had his fill already.
I don't know. Every Wednesday, exactly while we're doing this, now it's gone, but a guy comes, next door neighbor decides he's going to blow the leaves around right underneath my window, like clockwork. So I had to go close a window because it's been beautiful here in New Jersey all week. It's been 75 degrees, sunny, no humidity. It's been glorious. The windows are open. The breeze is coming in. I feel like I'm hanging out at the beach and I'm not even there. So I had to go close a window. Otherwise, it would have been very distracting.
You say that, but I didn't hear anything.
Oh, you didn't? Well, because you know what? This microphone is supposed to be one of those background canceling things, but I don't trust it.
Well, you can trust it because I had no idea what was going on. I just saw you get.
Oh, okay. I mean, it was loud. It was real loud. So,
well, it's funny though. I always hear it whenever you've got fire trucks and police cars and ambulances going around. I always hear that, but I could not hear that. It must be a pitch thing.
I guess, but that's what happened. So, no, I don't buy Girl Scout cookies because they've attached themselves to Planned Parenthood, and I say, boom.
Yeah. Tell that little girl to go get a real job. It's the same reason I don't support the Boy Scouts of America anymore, because they're not the Boy Scouts of America anymore. They're the Scouts of America.
I have all my dad's stuff because my dad was in the Scouts when it had only been around for about less than 10 years. And so I have all of his medals and his patches and things and his books from back then. And that's what it was an organization of manly men doing manly things,
Right. Where like if you wanted to join the Order of the Arrow, you had to spend 40 hours alone in the wilderness with nothing but a canteen and a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
In complete silence.
On your head, I believe.
I don't know about that part. But yeah, it makes sense. Because what did you need? You need like 21 merit badges to be Eagle Scout.
Something like that. I know.
So,
yeah.
Now it's like you've got a DEI policy on the website about how to become an Eagle Scout. Just say you're a minority and you're one of the 743 made up genders that we decided to affirm. No, I get it.
It changed so drastically so quickly because I went through Scouts with my son. I guess it would have been about 15 years or so ago. And it was
it hasn't been that long since it went weird.
It hasn't, because we went on weekend trips where it was like, okay, you brought your tent. Hopefully you have a couple of sticks to rub together so you can make a fire. We'll see in 4 days,
Yeah.
There's some trout in the river there, I think. So have at it. And it was still like that. So I mean,
go out and don't die.
Go out. Yeah, but that was the thing. If the guys who came back and lived, they got their badge. The other guys, not so much.
I mean, yeah. But all right, we've got 45 seconds left in the show. We went. Yep. It was a great discussion, though. I really enjoyed it.
It was.
But we'll wrap it up so we don't not become not able to stream this because I'm cheap and I won't upgrade my StreamYard plan. But we will see you tomorrow and bring back the habit of having Ed bring strange things from his basement.
Oh, it's
But
right here,
until
ready
then,
to go.
thanks for watching, listening, subscribing, and putting this in front of your anti-Catholic friends.
God bless everybody.